When Eurypylus, Euaemon's high-born son, saw Aias laboring under this discharge of missiles, he ran up to support him, let fly his glittering javelin, and struck the chieftain Epithion, son of Phaseus, in the liver under the midriff, bringing him forthwith to the ground. Then dashing up, he began to take his armor from his shoulders. But as he stripped his man, he was observed by Prince Paris, who quickly bent his bow at him and hit him with an arrow in the right thigh. Eurypylus, his leg hampered by the broken shaft, saved himself from certain death by taking cover with the men of his own company. But he gave a great shout to the Danaans, "My friends, captains and counselors of the Argives, turn in your tracks and make a stand to save Aias from destruction. Shoot as he is, I cannot see how he can disengage himself. A rally, then, round the great Aias, son of Telamon." The wounded Eurypylus had done his part, and they closed in and rallied round him, crouching behind sloped shields with their spears at the ready. Aias came up to them, and once he had reached their friendly line, he faced about once more and stood. So the fight went on, like an inextinguishable fire. Meanwhile, the mares of Neleus' breed, sweating as they can, were bearing Nestor from the field, and with him Machon, shepherd of the people. And it so happened that the great Achilles of the nimble feet, who had been watching the crisis of the battle and the lamentable rout from the stern of his capacious ship, saw him and took note. He called at once to his friend Patroclus, shouting for him from the ship. Hearing his call in the hut, Patroclus came out, looking like the god of war, and that was the beginning of his end. Before Achilles could explain himself, he said, "Why did you call, Achilles? What do you want for me?" And Achilles the great runner said, "My dear prince and my heart's delight, at last I see the Achaeans gathering at my knees to abase themselves, for they are in desperate straits. But what I wish you to do now, my lord Patroclus, is to go and ask Nestor, who is the wounded man he is taking from the field. Seen from behind, he looks exactly like Machon, son of Asclepius, but the horses passed by me in such a hurry that I did not see his face." Patroclus obeyed his friend at once, and set off at a run along the Achaean huts and ships. When Nestor and Machaon reached Nestor's hut, they stepped down from the car to the bountiful earth, while the horses were unyoked by Eurymedon, the king's old squire. When they stood in the breeze by the seashore to dry the sweat from their tunics, and after that went into the hut and sat down on easy chairs, a pottage was prepared for them by the lady Hacamede, whom the old man had had from Tenedos when Achilles sacked the place. She was a daughter of the great-hearted Arsenus, and had been picked out for him by the Achaeans as a tribute to their ablest counselor. She began by moving up to them a handsome, polished table with enameled legs. On this she put a bronze dish with an onion to flavor the drink, some yellow honey, and sacred barley meal, and beside these a magnificent beaker adorned with golden studs, which the old man had brought from home. It had 4 handles. Each was supported by 2 legs, and on top of each, facing one another, a pair of golden doves were feeding. Anyone else would have found it difficult to shift the beaker from the table when it was full, but Nestor, old as he was, could lift it without trouble. In this cup their comely attendant mixed them the pottage with Pramnian wine, and after making it ready by grating into it some goat's milk cheese with a bronze grater and sprinkling white barley on top, she invited them to drink, which they did. They had quenched their parching thirst and were engaged in friendly conversation when Patroclus suddenly appeared in the doorway like a god. The old man looked up, rose from his polished chair, drew him forward by the hand, and begged him to be seated. But Patroclus was reluctant to come farther, and made his excuses. "I have no time to sit down, my venerable lord. You will not persuade me. I have too much respect and reverence for the master who sent me on my errand, which was to ask you who the man is whom you brought in wounded. But as I see for myself that it is my lord Machaon, I will go back at once and report to Achilles, for you know well enough, my venerable lord, what a difficult man he is, quite capable of finding fault without reason." "I cannot understand," replied Nestor, the Gerenian horseman, "why Achilles is so concerned about a casualty here or there, while ignoring the disaster that the whole army has suffered. Our very best men are lying by the ships wounded by arrows or spears. The mighty Diomedes, son of Tydeus, has been hit. Odysseus, the great spearman, has been wounded. So has Agamemnon. Eurypylus, too, has had an arrow in his thigh. And here is another whom I have just brought off the field, hit by an arrow from a bow. Yet Achilles, though he is a fighter too, has no concern or pity for the Danaans. Is he waiting till, in spite of all we can do for our gallant ships, go up in flames beside the sea, and our army is destroyed piecemeal? I cannot take his place. My limbs are not so supple now, and my old strength is gone. Ah, if only I were still as young and vigorous as I once was when we, the Hellenes, came to blows about the lifting of some cattle, and I killed Antimonius, the gallant son of Hyperachus, who lived in Elis. I was raiding his herds by way of reprisal, and when he took the lead in their defense, he was brought down by a javelin from my hand. His rustic levies scattered in panic, and what a haul of booty we rounded up from the field. 50 herds of cattle, as many flocks of sheep, as many droves of pigs, and as many scattered herds of goats, as well as 150 chestnut horses, all of them mares, and many with foals beside them. In the night we drove them in to Neleus, city of Pylos, and Neleus was delighted that an unfledged warrior like myself should have had such luck. At dawn, our town criers summoned all who had debts owed to them in Elis to attend, and the leading men in Pylos held a meeting and divided the spoils, which came in very handy, as the Epines were in debt to a number of our people. Indeed, we in Pylos were in a bad way then. The few of us that were left after the mighty Heracles had come and done his worst to us in previous years, and all our best men had been killed. The excellent Neleus had had 12 sons, of whom I alone survived. All the rest had perished. As a result, the Epine soldiery had become insupportable. They treated us with contempt and oppressed us shamelessly. But now the old King Neleus got a herd of cattle and a great flock of sheep out of our spoils. He chose 300 for himself, together with their shepherds, all by way of recouping a heavy loss he had sustained in the good land of Elis. For when he sent 4 racehorses there with a chariot to run in the games and compete for the tripod, King Augeas kept them and sent back their driver, a horseless and sorry man, with an insulting message. Neleus resented the wording of this as much as the king's high-handed action, so now he helped himself liberally to the booty, leaving the remainder to the people to divide in such a way that no one should go short of his proper share. We had just dispatched the last details of this business and were sacrificing to the gods at various points in the town when, on the 3rd day, the whole strength of Elis, horse and foot, borne down on us in hot haste, and with them marched the 2 Moliones, who were still lads at the time with no experience of war. There is an outlying stronghold called Thyrosa, perched on a steep hill overlooking Alpheus, on the borders of sandy Pylos. Their aim was to destroy this place, so they invested it and also overran the surrounding plain. But in the night, Athena came speeding down from Olympus and warned us to get under arms. She found us not unwilling. In fact, the whole force she raised in Pylos was spoiling for a fight. But Neleus did not wish me to join in. He felt I knew too little about serious fighting, and he hid my horses from me all the same, and though I went on foot, Athena so arranged the affair that I managed to outshine even our own charioteers. There is a river called Minias, which falls into the sea near Arena. Here the Pylian horse halted till dawn, while the infantry battalions came rolling up. From that point, a rapid march in battle order brought us by noon to the sacred river Alpheus. We sacrificed there to Almighty Zeus, and also offered a bull to the river god, a bull to Poseidon, and a heifer of the herd to Athena of the flashing eyes. Then we ate our supper in our several messes, and settled down for the night on the banks of the stream, every man with his armor on. The Epines, meanwhile, were beleaguering the citadel, full of confidence and determined on its downfall. They had no idea of the trouncing they were going to get instead. No sooner had the sun shone his face above the horizon than we gave battle with a prayer to Zeus and Athena, and when the 2 armies came to grips, the first man fell to me and I possessed myself of his excellent horses. He was a spearman called Mulius, a son-in-law of Achilles, married to his eldest daughter, auburn-haired Agameda, who knew every magic herb that grows in the wide world. As he came at me, I struck him with my bronze-headed spear, and he fell headlong in the dust. I leapt into his chariot. I took my place in the front rank, and the proud Epines broke and ran in all directions. When they saw the captain of their horse, their best fighter, brought to earth. But I was after them like a black squall. I captured 50 chariots, and by each of them a couple men, felled by my spear, bit the dust. In fact, I would have killed the twin Moliones of the house of Actor too, had not their father Poseidon, the imperial earth shaker, hidden them in a thick mist and rescued them from the field. Yes, Zeus gave us a great victory there. We chased them across open country, killing the men and gathering up their splendid arms till our chariots were rolling through the cornlands of Buprasium, and we reached the Olean rock and the place called Elysian Hill. At that point, Athena saw fit to turn our forces back, and there I killed and left my last man. Our charioteers withdrew from Buprasium and broke back to Pylos, all of them giving glory to Zeus among the gods and to Nestor among men. Thus I acquitted myself among the men of my day, as surely as I live. Now look at Achilles. He is a brave man, yet who but he will profit by that bravery? And mark my words, he too will shed tears when the army is destroyed, tears of remorse. My friend, do you remember what your father Meniotis told you that day he sent you from Phthia to join Agamemnon? I and King Odysseus were in the house and heard it all. We were on a recruiting tour through the fertile land of Achaia when we came to Peleus' splendid house, where we found the Lord Meniotius and yourself, and Achilles with you. Peleus, the old charioteer, was burning fat from an ox's thigh in honor of Zeus, the thunderer, in his stable yard. He had a golden chalice in his hand and was accompanying the burnt offering by a libation of sparkling wine, while you two were preparing the meat. At that moment, Odysseus and I appeared at the gate. Achilles leapt up in astonishment, took us by the hand, and brought us in. He gave us chairs, and with all the usual hospitality offered us refreshment. When we had satisfied our hunger and thirst, I disclosed the object of our visit and invited you and Achilles to enlist. You were more than willing, and your fathers both gave you their blessing, while the old man, Peleus, exhorted his boy Achilles always to strive for the foremost place and outdo his peers. Meniotius, son of Actor, was giving you his own advice. I remember his words. My son, he said, Achilles is of nobler birth than you, and he is also by far the stronger man. But you are older than he is. It is for you to give him sound advice, to set him an example, and to take the lead, which he will follow to his own advantage. Those were your father's precepts, which you have forgotten. But even so, it is not too late for you to talk in this strain to Achilles. He might as well have sense enough to listen. Who knows? A friend's advice is often most effective, and with a little luck, you may yet coax him into action. But if he is secretly deterred by some prophecy, some word from Zeus that this Lady Mother has disclosed to him, let him at least allow you to take the field with the Myrmidon force at your back, and so perhaps bring salvation to the Danaans. Let him give you his own glorious armor to fight in, so that the Trojans may take you for him and break off the battle. That would give our weary forces time to recuperate, and even a short breathing space makes all the difference in war. The Trojans themselves have fought to the point of exhaustion, and you bring fresh, might well drive them back to the city from the ships and huts. Patroclus was profoundly moved by Nestor's words, and set off at the double along the line of ships to rejoin his royal master. He was still running when he reached the ships of King Odysseus, the place where they held their assemblies and their legal sessions, and had put up their altars to the gods. There he was met by Eumaemon's high-born son Eurypylus, limping back from the battle with a wound from an arrow in his thigh. Sweat was pouring from his head and shoulders, and the blood ran dark from his painful wound. But his mind was not affected. The gallant Patroclus was moved to compassion at the sight, and in his distress for Eurypylus, he pictured all the Danaan captains and counselors, far from their dear ones and the land of their fathers, filling the nimble dogs of Troy with their white flesh. He appealed to Eurypylus. "My noble lord," he asked, "is there any hope of holding the monstrous Hector in check, or will the Achaeans fall to his spear and be destroyed today?" "My lord Patroclus," replied the wounded Eurypylus, "there is no salvation for the Achaeans now. They will fall by their own black ships. All our former champions are lying there already, wounded by Trojan spears or arrows, and all the time the enemy grows stronger. But at least you can rescue me and see me safe to my black ship. I want you to cut out this arrow from my thigh, wash off the blood with warm water, and spread soothing ointment on the wound. They say you have some excellent prescriptions that you learnt from Achilles, who was taught by Chiron, the civilized centaur. I cannot appeal to our surgeons, Polyderius and Macon, for I hear that one of them is lying wounded in camp, in need of a good physician himself, while the other is still hotly engaged with the Trojans in the field." "This is intolerable," Menœtus' gallant son exclaimed. "What are we to do, my lord Eurypylus? I am on my way to Achilles, my wise master, with a message for Gerenian Nestor, the warden of Achaea. All the same, I am not going to leave you in the lurch, exhausted as you are." As he spoke, he put his arm round the great captain's waist and supported him to his hut. When he saw him, Eurypylus' squire spread some hides on the floor, and there Patroclus laid him down, cut the sharp point of the arrow out of his thigh with a knife, and washed away the dark blood from the wound with warm water. Then he teased out the root of a bitter herb in his hands and applied it to the place. It was a sedative which banished all his pain. The wound began to dry, and the blood ceased to flow.